Goodbye, old friend. This is the end of a beautiful friendship. I'm sorry to see you go, but it has to happen. It has to. You're not good for me anymore. It's time we really break up. I mean, for at least a few months. I mean, we'll probably end up getting back together because you know that I can't stay away from you. So, I'm going to throw you away for now. Okay, here you go. Of course that was empty, you know. I had already eaten the M&Ms. I'm not an idiot. So that was tough. Last M&Ms for quite a while. I know I've said this before. I know I've gone down this road before. And I always end up, it always like pulls me back in, just like in The Godfather. Anyway, in all seriousness, all that was not a joke. I did get rid of the empty M&M bag. And I am staying off the sugar for at least several months. Well, let's put it that way. I can't ever say forever to myself, or my brain just kind of implodes on itself and goes, no. But we're staying away from each other for a while. But the reason I'm doing that and talking about this today is today, if you see from the title of the video, is what will you do today, basically, to make a big change in your life? In other words, starting today, what will you do? So for me, it's going off the sugar. And I don't welcome the next few days off of sugar, because every time I go off of it, I go through several days of withdrawal. And I'm always like, ugh, going, why did I do this again? And then inevitably it sucks me back in about a week or two in, and then I end up getting trapped up in the whole sugar thing. I tell you, anybody out there that doesn't think sugar is one of the worst drugs there is, do your research. It is. And it definitely has hooked me. I was never a person that was on, recreational drugs or hard drugs or whatever like that. But boy, sugar is my drug. So anyway, that's what I'm doing starting today. I'm getting off the sugar. So the topic today is, what will you do to make your life better? And it could be anything. It could be something really small, or it could be something large. I mean, to me, giving up sugar is kind of big, actually. It's not really a tiny thing, because it's so hard for me to stay away from it. I mean, after a period of time, it gets easier, but it is a hard thing. I would say on a scale from 1 to 10, giving up sugar is probably a solid 8 for me. But those of you out there, what will you do to make your life better? It could be a small thing. It could be changing a particular habit you have, or getting rid of stuff, like we talked about a couple of videos back about, getting rid of the stuff. It could be anything, but think about what you could do starting today that would make your life different. And the thing is that it's always good to do that once in a while for ourselves, not only because it encourages like a new healthy habit or something else positive in our lives, but it's just good to shake things up in our brains every once in a while and just have something different. I did a video a while ago. I don't remember. It was a related theme to this, but slightly different. And it actually might have just been a short where I talked about, just do one thing differently today. I think it was a short. So this is kind of the longer version of doing one thing differently can have a tremendous ripple effect on the rest of your life. And it can actually cause you to want to do other things differently and make other changes or whatever. And usually when we start going down that road, it's a positive road. We really start making positive changes in our life. And so for me, sugar is a big linchpin for that. Usually when I've been able to stay off sugar at least a month, I start feeling better. I stop craving it. I stop, it just, of course I can lose, weight gradually then. That is a huge thing for me, giving up this one thing that has so many positive effects. Think about in your own life what you could do starting today. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about some other things I've done in my life that really did have a positive effect. And one of those things is just deciding to get up either earlier or maybe staying up later. If you're more of a night person and not a morning person, then don't fight your own circadian rhythm. I'm more of a night person. I'm not really a good morning person. And so for me to say, oh, I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock every morning, that's not going to work for me. It's just not. That's going to feel like torture. In fact, years ago when I was working and I remember I had one job I actually had to get up at 5 in the morning for. It was torture every single day. And I was in my 30s at the time. It was not fun to do. Within your own ability to do that, try to stick with your own biorhythm. In other words, don't try to do something that you're not going to be able to do successfully. That's one way you can do, though, that really changes things, really kind of making your schedule around your own natural body rhythm. And some other things you can do. If you tend to buy a lot of stuff, I haven't done a financial video on this channel in a while. Probably will be doing one dedicated to that soon. But one of the things that helps, I have a friend right now that's doing this for himself because I kept encouraging him to do it, is every time you go out and you spend money, and I don't mean your normal bills, but I mean things that you pay at the beginning of the month or middle of the month or whatever, that you already know. A lot of those are, people have auto pay and stuff like that. That's fine. But anything else you spend on food or incidentals or gas or whatever, you write it down in a little notebook or put it on a note thing on your phone. But keep track of your expenses. One of the best ways you can really get a hold of your spending is to be aware of how much you're spending. So that's a change. That's a change that's a relatively small change, but it has a big ripple effect to it. So that's another one that can be really good for people. And, doing simple things like, I remember when I was growing up, my dad was in the military, so of course this was a rule in the house. We had to make our beds before we went to school. Or if it was a weekend either, we had to make our bed before we went and had breakfast. And my dad was a big believer in this, and there is some truth to that. I still do this to this day where I make sure my bed is straightened in the morning. I don't really make it quite the same way as I did when I was a kid, but I do things like that. I make sure one of the other things I do that really makes life better for me is I am not a neat freak at all. I'm kind of in the middle ground on as far as neatness goes. But one thing I have to do is pretty much clean my kitchen at night before I go to bed. I cannot stand dirty dishes in the sink waiting for me the next day. I do it once in a great while, and I do leave them in there, and it always bugs me the next day. So that's another change that I learned to make over the years that has really stuck with me. So find something that you can change in your world. It could be a small thing, could be a big thing. Maybe you've really wanted to move from the place you're living right now, or you really want to go on a trip, or you really want to start a new hobby. All of those things are bigger things. But again, you start with one step. You start with doing one thing to get into it, and then, that leads to the next step and the next step. I would say I think I'm pretty average in this respect. I both love change and hate change. I both love it and hate it. And let me explain how that works. So I love the idea of change. And even sometimes when I'm actually changing something in my life, I actually love the process of it. But sometimes I don't. And sometimes I resist it. Sometimes I resist the change. I think a lot depends on how much we really want it or not. If you really want change in your life, then you're going to tend to embrace it more. If you don't want change as much in your life, then you're going to resist it. And if it's being forced on you, you will tend to resist it. So I think a lot depends on the difference between how it's coming at you, the change. For me, I want to make some changes in my life in the next year, but those are things I want to have happen. So I'm embracing them. Even though there's some fear around it, and even though there's some, a little part of me that holds back and goes, yeah, well, maybe we should wait another time or whatever, because I'm trying to be careful and cautious about making those changes. As you get older, especially, I find that I used to be able to make changes probably even easier than I do now. That it's a little bit harder to think about certain kinds of changes, like especially moving or traveling or things like that. I think those were much easier for me even 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever. And I think that's fairly normal to have that as you get older. Although I'm sure there's some people out there that, that I've always really admired people that could really tremendously embrace change, like they really love it. And the nature of life is change. The nature of life is change. You got to get used to it, because it's, whether you like it or not, it's going to change. When I read viewers' comments, I really notice that there's a lot of them referring to the fact that they had certain things at one time in their life, like more friends or a more stable environment or whatever. But as they've gotten older, they've lost that. That is the norm for all of us. We've all had things, and I don't even mean like possessions or material things. I mean, we've had relationships or friendships or connections with people that as time goes on, for one reason or another, we lose them. So change happens whether we like it or not. So my feeling is, I know stuff is always going to happen that I can't control, but my theory is try to control as much of it as you can. In other words, make the change happen on your own terms as much as possible. That is probably a big message of this video today. Make the change happen on your own terms. And that's why you start something today to make something different. And, I know I've even done a couple of shorts on this on my channel about talking about the idea, well, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Sounds like some sort of a Buddhist saying, but it's true. If you don't change something, how do you expect something to change? Unless it happens unwillingly, unless something else external to you causes it to change. But basically, if you don't change something for yourself, then how do you expect it to be any different? So that's why I am a big believer in this. I wanted to share this because, I knew I was going off sugar. I'd been talking about it for weeks, that, and I was really having a hard time getting off of it. But I knew I needed to do it. And I thought, well, I'm going to go on here again, hold myself accountable, and, talk about my experience with it, because it is painful for me. To go off sugar is so incredibly emotionally painful. In the first few days, it's even physically painful. It really is a legal drug. There's no question about it. It is a legal drug. I will be sharing every week on my live streams my sugar withdrawal and then non-sugar lifestyle. So I'll be talking about that, especially the first few weeks. After that, I probably won't need to, but it's kind of also moral support for me to do it, to hold myself accountable on the channel. So anyway, if there's something you want to change in your life, start today, make something happen. If you want to share what you want to change in the comments below, please do so. What kind of changes you would like to make in your own life. I really do read all the comments. So I may not always personally respond to every comment, but I do read all the comments. So that's what's going on. That's my simple message for today. Start today. Make a change so you don't have it forced on you. I guess that would be my big message from this. So until next time, be well, be kind, keep moving forward, and take care. Bye.